Hi, I'm Judy Waters. Welcome to my channel. Here I bring you author interviews of ordinary people who have something extraordinary to share with the world. I also bring you short little writing prompts so that you can get those creative juices going in your own brain so you can write the stories for your generations to come. Because you know what? You have a story to tell. So let me help you tell it. I want you to realize that through memoir writing, you could go into so many different genres. I've seen historical fiction based on maybe a great grandmother's life that came down different generations. I have seen nonfiction. That's where we are today with our author. I have seen how-to it books, how to do this and how to do that based on someone's experience. There are so many, actually, I've even seen a coloring book based on someone's life. So many different avenues you can take. I did one journal based on my mother's positive attitude in growing old, panning for gold in our golden years. Um, There's just so many different ways that you could write your memoir, and it doesn't have to be, I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this. That's really not a memoir. That's more of an autobiography. Autobiography, of course, is from day one when you were born up to your present day, the whole life. Memoir is a snippet of your life. It could be your teen years. It could be your early married years. Um, it could be your grandmother years, whatever. So when writing or when thinking of writing your stories down, kind of think in, different ways. Which genre would you like to do? Would you like to do the real life story? My first one, The Road Home, was a real life story based on my upbringing on the farm in Pennsylvania. Of course, I call it creative fiction or creative memoir because even though it was true in my eyes, my brother and sister may have seen it differently. Um, and of course, I don't remember exactly what people said. I remember the idea of what was behind it. So there was some dialogue that I had to recreate. But that's memoir. And memoir is usually because our brains are faulty, we don't remember everything, but it's usually that sort of uh, recreating dialogue. So, anyway, today I'm going to bring you an author that is really, really different outside of my scope. In fact, when he first came to my critique group last year sometime, and we started critiquing his chapters one by one, I thought, oh my goodness, he was such an excellent writer, but I knew nothing about what he was talking about. He was talking about competency, management, in the car industry. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to help Jim. And loved the guy, but I couldn't help him. But as the weeks went on and I started reading more and more of his book, I thought, wow, his great writing style and very, almost to me, like it was memoir style, which to me speaks to me, but I was enjoying learning about practical competencies. Go figure. Then he asked me if I would publish his book and help him edit and all. And I told him no, that I'm not the expert in this area. I directed him to a couple other people. He took it to a couple other people who went through it. And then he came back to me and asked me if I would do it. So I decided I would take a stab at it. And I think we came out with a pretty good book. And he sold quite a few. But I do want to introduce you to Jim. Jim Heideman, let me read his bio for you. Jim Heideman has over 40 years experience in the automobile industry, including many dealership roles such as parts counterperson, service technician, and service manager. He spent over 20 years as an instructional technology professional with major multinational vehicle manufacturers, developing and managing training and organizational development programs. Jim couples a passionate interest in improving organizational performance with a deep concern for helping instructional technology professionals grow and develop to become exceptional performers in their careers. Jim Heideman and his wife live in Hill Country, Texas. Not too far from me, just a couple miles from me. So, once again, let me present Jim Heideman. Good morning, Jim.
Well, good morning, Judy. How are you this morning?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm so glad that you stopped in. Actually, I invited you a few weeks ago, and I'm so glad you're here because I love sharing the different types of memoir that people can write. People a lot of times think it's just, oh, my whole life story, and it's not. It's a snippet. And so
Right.
I always like to bring them different ones, so they can see a variety of them. But I have a whole list of questions
Oh,
and
okay.
wanted to
Good.
ask you. Anyway, so when we talk about blending memoir and expertise, how did you decide to structure your book, Practically Competent, as a blend of memoir and professional guide?
Yeah, I actually started this book. It's funny because I changed a little bit on my thinking along the way, but I actually started out trying to write a book about instructional technology, and I found that had been written about pretty extensively. So I tried to summarize my experiences, and I thought that that might be interesting. I spent over 40 years in the automobile industry. And I had a variety of dealership jobs. I was a parts person. I was a technician for a number of years, service manager. And then I went into the corporate world and I found I really was interested in how people learned. And as a training and development, a training developer, first of all, and then as a training manager later, um, I saw my my aim a little bit differently. Not only was I talking about what had happened to me as a memoir and the things that I had done, but I began to see this as a project of not just retelling those experiences, but as a way to use those experiences to apply the competencies that I learned and that I write about to inform and encourage others to learn,
Hmm.
and maybe even become what I call ITPs, instructional technology professionals themselves. Um, and I was hoping to be able to spark the interest of others to pursue a degree in instructional technology, or perhaps pursue a career in instructional technology.
Right.
So it changed over time, but I still try to look at competencies as a way to achieve exceptional performance in the work you do.
Okay. Okay. You tell a lot of different anecdotal stories, experiences that you had throughout I mean, you've trained automotive people all over the world. So, what can you tell which story was the most challenging? Well, which was the most challenging for you to share in your book and why?
Yeah. Um, Let me give you just a little background. So I hope this doesn't go off topic and get a little tedious, but most of my career in the automobile industry had been involved in writing at the corporate level, but writing training manuals, writing instructional guides, and trying to help automobile technicians to do their jobs better. So this was all very focused technical content and focused communication. Writing this book was really different. And this is where I struggled a little bit. I don't consider myself a writer in the sense that I'm an author and write numerous things and see that as my career. And especially in this case, um, I was just really uncomfortable writing about myself. And all of a sudden I find myself writing about me, not about a system or a technical feature on an automobile. This was a challenge to my self-confidence. And it took me a while really to build that confidence to be able to say, I did this or I did that. I was involved in this. And I try to explain that in the last chapter of the book, in fact, which is entitled Self-Confidence. That's the experience that I write about there. And fortunately for me, I got a lot of encouragement along the way. The writers group that I attended was nothing but encouraging. A good friend of mine, I'll tell you this anecdote. A good friend of mine named Steve, and I write about him a little bit in the book too. Mm-hmm. You know, I mentioned that to him once. I said, I'm talking about things that other people have written about. How is this going to be interesting? And he said, well, yeah, these topics have been written about, but not by you. And I kind of use that to say, I can tell my own story and I can tell it any way I want. Right. And that gave me a little bit of confidence because it gave me a lot of freedom to write about things. And that was a very encouraging, a very encouraging outcome in writing this book.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, that would probably leads into my next question I was going to ask was, how did mentors or relationships in your life influence your storytelling style? And I'm glad to see who came alongside and told you that.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because I've always thought I was very blessed to always work with and be associated with some really, really smart people. Mm-hmm. And especially in the world of instructional design in the automobile industry, there were always challenges, but I always looked at the co-workers as people who shared these challenges. They never lost their positive attitude. And we sort of worked together well because we fed on each other. We were able to see the challenges without ever seeing them as insurmountable. That gave us a lot of confidence. And as ITPs, as instructional technology professionals, we were able to look at the challenges, keeping in mind our responsibility to our learners and the responsibility we had to the organization. I guess suffice to say, what we did as ITPs really mattered to us. We all know that if you're going to expect exceptional performance in others, you better be an exceptional performer yourself. And that's what I try to bring out in every chapter, is how that exceptional performance played out and played a role in shaping this memoir that I wrote and in having shaped my entire career, really.
Right. Good. Okay. You use so many analogies in the book. It keeps it very interesting, like the bicycle and even moments of nighttime lucidity to illustrate your points. How did you develop these creative ways of connecting your personal life to your professional expertise?
Yeah, this is an interesting question because, you know, as instructional technology professionals, our real goal is to try to bring people from a state of not knowing something to knowing something. Mm-hmm. But it actually even goes beyond that. It goes to knowing something and being able to apply it. That is using the knowledge on the job. Some of the concepts that we talk about in the automobile industry are very complex. They are highly technical. And for me, I found that using analogies can help bring this new information into words and into ideas that learners are familiar with. So if the learner has a familiarity with something, then the concept doesn't seem quite so complex. That's what I try to achieve. And I found I really like doing that. And It helps me keep grounded in the objective, believe it or not, which is helping the learner. And that was always the focus on using analogies. It also helps me from going off into lengthy explanations about some technical system that results in the learners getting bogged down or lost. And I try to, as I say, I try to use those analogies to make sure that that people see there's more than one way to look at something. And if you look at it from a standpoint of familiarity, then things are much more easily made sense for you.
Yeah. You know, you very openly discuss organizational challenges and maybe missteps that you had along the way. It's so important in a memoir to be able to tell the bad with the good, so that you're not the perfect person all along the way. We all make mistakes, you know. But how did reflecting on these moments help shape the narrative and message of your book?
Oh gosh, yeah. If I actually thought I went through life without making multiple mistakes every day, I'd be lying to myself. But I think the biggest hurdle in achieving exceptional performance is to learn from your mistakes. In fact, I write about in an entire chapter. I write about something called accurate self-assessment. And to me, that's the most valuable competency that anybody can possess and apply, irrespective of your career. What it means is you take control of yourself. And so after every project that I would do, over time, I began to develop and I call it the capability or the competency of doing a mental after action. And I report to myself, what did you do well? What worked? And what is it you want to carry forward and continue to do? What didn't you do so well? What can you do to improve? What can you do to make it better next time so that you don't make those mistakes again? Because no matter what the outcome of any project or any endeavor, you have to own it. And that's tough. That's not easy to do.
Right.
It's hard to say, you know, I goofed up. I made the mistake. But that's what leadership is. And that's where leaders really excel. And that's what exceptional performance requires. You know, it's funny. Winston Churchill once said, no success is ever final, and no failure is ever fatal. But it's what you do afterwards that keeps you moving forward. My son's in the Army, and he likes to remind me, Charlie Mike, complete the mission. And the mission is exceptional performance every day and exceptional performance in the future. And that's how you get there.
That's great. That's great. You know, your book is a management book. It's nonfiction based on memoir. It could even be used in a college level managerial class. I think people are talking to you about doing that. But by framing your professional memoir or professional journey as a memoir, you know, what impact do you hope Practically Competent will have on future generations of instructional technology professionals?
Ooh. Well, let me recall an experience I had when early on in writing this book. I sent my writing out to a content reviewer who was kind enough to take a look at it and give me some progress, or give me a report out on the progress I was making, the things that he saw in there that I thought help me out. It turns out it was very helpful. And at one point he said to me, you know a lot about instructional technology. You know, maybe you're an expert. And I said, well, an expert? No, that's not really for me to judge. I don't really know that I'm an expert or not. And he said, well, no, that's not what I meant. What he said was, maybe you could take the expertise you have and use it to become what he called an expert leader. I actually write about this in the book. And that is a person who's wise enough to be listened to. And I thought, well, yeah, maybe I'm a little uncomfortable with that, but okay. And he said, but more importantly, you should consider yourself an expert servant. I said, well, what does that mean? He said, well, use your experiences and use them in a way that you can develop others along the way. Mm. And I guess that really sunk in. That was something I hadn't expected in him looking at the content that I had given him to look at. That really sunk in. So in summary, I hope there's a way that this book will maybe inspire others to take a look at not repeating exactly what I did, because every situation is different, but to use the concepts and learn a little bit. And in that sense, I want to be a servant to others and help them in their careers as well.
Great, great. I've asked you to take a look at chapter 13 of your book and to read a short section about your time with the Peace Corps. About the Peace Corps. So would you read that section to show the people how you blend memoir? And show us the cover of your book.
Okay, there's the cover. I don't know how this is going to come out here.
There that's good. How did you come up? Let me ask you, how did you come up with that cover?
It's sort of the cover illustration and the words actually came together. They came together in a funny sort of way. At one point in the book, I was how do I say this? I was talking to my wife, who had read what I had written, and I happened to mention at one time that I always feel like there's a way to use something I call situational awareness to prevent you from having problems. And I said, in fact, if you can't navigate the currents in an organization, you're going to find yourself swimming with the sharks. And my wife took that idea, and then she began to do some research for the graphic on the front. And came up with the graphic that I finally used that tried to depict this idea. There was another thing that's maybe a bit too subtle, but the words of the title, Practically Competent, are in two different fonts. I use the block letters because I try to subtly explain that that competencies are specific concepts and ideas, and that applying them is situationally dependent. So I try to depict that by using the word practically in more or less a cursive font and competent in block letters. Okay. I don't know if I said that in a way that
No, that's right. That's right. And I don't remember, did my designer do that, or did you? I know your wife.
Actually, my wife came up with this, and I reviewed, and as you know, a number of designs.
Okay.
But this one kind of stuck a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, would you go ahead and read that section for us?
Sure, if you don't mind. Okay. Now, this goes back, well, more years than I care to remember, probably. During the 1970s, during the reign of the Shah, I lived in Iran. Arrived in the city of Mianeh as a U.S. Peace Corps volunteer, assigned to teach welding, auto technology, and diesel mechanics in the city's vocational school. Mianeh is in Azerbaijan, about 460 kilometers west of Tehran, on the main highway to Tabriz. Its population of generously about 20,000 included the 5 or so nameless surrounding villages and settlements where most of my students live. Miami itself, a shoestring town, had a traffic circle in the center that connected the four paved streets. East and west, small shops, tea houses, and a covered bazaar served the residents. North and south, the pavement petered out after about 100 yards, quickly turning into mud. The traffic circle served the main commercial thoroughfare for donkey and horse-drawn carts, the ever-present herds of sheep, along with the occasional caravan bound for who knows where. These competed with road space with the few dozen vehicles of the wealthiest residents in town. The vocational school where I taught was on the otherwise deserted eastern end of the main street, a couple of miles outside of town. Anticipating a growing economy, the Shaw's modernization initiative aimed to create a labor pool of educated, technologically capable youth. The vocational school was built in anticipation of job opportunities that would await the specialized labor force I was helping prepare. And here I was, arriving with a pretty good idea of what needed to be done, eager to get started. With the purpose for training clearly established in my mind, training objectives needed to be developed. I had to confirm that nothing critical for the job performance of my students would be overlooked. This began with a general sense of the content for automotive technology. Applying the quasi-professional popcorn method, with idea kernels exploding randomly in the kettle of my heated thoughts, I completed a list of essential skill requirements for my learners. With this preliminary understanding of content, I proceeded to snap the instructional puzzle pieces into place.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah. And there are a lot of different places that, come up with all of that, those anecdotal things that make it so much more interesting. So,
Yeah.
what was the most difficult part of publishing your book or writing your book, whichever, what was hardest?
Yeah.
Well, writing is always a little more tricky, but
Yeah. I think it was probably two things: stay focused on the topic and
Mhm.
stay focused on your readers. Um, this took me a long time to write. I mulled this over in my head for a long time. So staying focused on the topic meant that I had to get into a bit of a schedule. I'll talk about that a little bit later
Mhm.
if you don't mind. But um, really staying focused on the reader was something that was really important to me. As you can probably tell by this very interview, I tend toward the verbose. Um, but I but I found that parsimony is really valuable. And I read a lot of books. And the ones that I enjoyed the most, and this was part of my preparation for writing, the ones I enjoyed the most were the ones in which I almost felt that the author was writing to me and me alone. Um, Louis L'Amour is the one who does that and epitomizes that for me. And that's the connection that I try to achieve. I want to feel as though I'm speaking and having a conversation with the reader. And in order to do that, something very important for me was to keep in mind something Aristotle said, which was think like a wise man, speak like a common man.
Mhm.
And I think that is how authors connect. The ones that are effective are able to do that. That's what I tried to get.
That's great advice, really. So, how are you? I know you've sold a lot of books so far, but how are you getting your books out in front of readers?
Well, I just recently returned from the meeting at a local chapter at an organization called ATD, and I've been associated with ATD a long time. They used to be called ASTD, Association for uh, American Association for Skills and Development. They've changed their name now. They're now the Association for Talent Development. So I try to stay in touch with those groups because typically they are populated with people whose careers was the same as mine. They're instructional technology professionals. Um, and that's been very helpful for me. The other thing I stay in touch with, and I've been real fortunate in maintaining a network of friends and prior coworkers, um, is to stay in touch with the automobile industry. There are a number of organizations for automobile training managers and automobile training developers. So I try to stay in touch with them in order to be sure that I can extend my thinking and maybe influence some of those people as well in the field of instructional technology.
Okay, okay. And what kind of advice would you give to first-time writers or first-time memoirists?
Yeah, okay. Couple of thoughts here. Um, First, you have to be an anti-crastinator. Um, we all know what procrastinators are, but you got to be an anti-crastinator. I'm not sure that's a real word or if it's just something I just made up. But you got to stick with it. And in that regard, some people say, yeah, the way to do that is to stay on a strict schedule. Sit down every day at a specific time. Spend a certain amount of time writing. And that's the way you do it. And I bet that works for some. Um, Not for me so much. I mean, having said that, getting this book written and done was never out of my mind. I may have mentioned to you, um, this was 10, 15 years in the works to get this done. But I can't be inspired by sitting down in front of a computer screen trying to write. That doesn't work for me. That's not my way of doing it. So I found in the last year or two, sitting outside, writing down my thoughts as I looked out over the hill country, that worked for me. I could write things down. I knew the content. I knew what I was going to write about, but sometimes it didn't come together in a linear way. I just organize my thoughts to solve this problem in snippets. Things come and go. One of the analogies I used was waking up at 2:30 in the morning and saying, I got this brilliant idea. And I could write it down. So I knew it was always on my mind because it always appeared to me in my thoughts. So as I wrote, I tried to capture some of these ideas on little sheets of paper. All looks very confused. And maybe it was at the time I was doing it, but then I was able to try to coalesce these and sort them and put them in logical piles so that it could write an individual category or chapter and say everything I wanted to say about it.
That's awesome.
The other thing in being an anti-crastinator is you find that as you go through life, at least I did, it's easy to get distracted. Life is complex. There's a lot going on. You've got sometimes if you're employed, you've got professional responsibilities and duties. You've got family. You've got distractions, playing golf, doing other things that you enjoy doing. And it's real easy to get distracted and get pulled off into something else.
True.
But overall, a goal is a dream that has a timeline. And you put yourself into the timeline, and you have to avoid the distractions. I think it was Winston Churchill said, you'll never reach your goal if you stop to throw stones at every barking dog. And it does happen. You just have to stay on task.
I like that. A wise man. He was a wise man.
Yes, he was.
Well, Jim, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for taking the time, and I really have enjoyed working with you. I just wish you had, I hope you have another book in you, but
Well, the funny thing is, this is maybe off topic a little bit, but my wife happened to mention to me the other day, didn't you start writing a book about your experiences in Iran? I said, well, I
Oh,
did. I looked through a bunch of old boxes and I found some notes I had made, some things I'd written down about that. And I'm tempted to do that.
good
So
for you.
I was really inspired because I got such valuable help and I had such support in doing this book that
Oh,
I am tempted to try it again. So hopefully
well,
something could come out of it.
I look forward to seeing that. It'll be
Okay, well,
another
Judy,
great seller.
well, I we'll see. Right now it's a timely topic, but
Yeah,
not in the way some people are approaching it,
yeah,
perhaps.
yeah, yeah.
Well, Judy, thank you. It has been an honor and a real privilege to talk to you today. I sincerely appreciate this.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Have a great day, Jim.
Thank you, Judy. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye bye.
I hope you enjoyed our time with James Heideman. He is a dear friend of mine that I enjoyed working with. So I did want to mention, though, that James does have a lot of educational background behind him. He has a Ph.D. in administrative and organizational studies with a minor in business management. So that helps a little bit. But he was senior curriculum developer and the European director of training for a large automobile manufacturer. So again, I just wanted you to see how memoir can be blended with your expertise. I love leaving you with little prompts, writing prompts, because I want you to be able to pick up on every author interview that I do and learn something new for your own writing endeavors. So the prompt today, kind of a prompt, is to maybe list down things that you're an expert at. Well, you don't have to be an expert at it, but things that you really know a lot about. Perhaps it's gardening. Perhaps it's I don't know, maybe you're really great at fixing your own car. But something you're an expert at, something that has maybe been very instrumental throughout your life. It could be parenting skills. See how you can wrap a memoir around that. Uh, so your writing prompt for today is pretty much, I think, make a list of five things that you are really knowledgeable about. You don't have to be an expert, but you're very knowledgeable about. And anything you don't know about that area, you could actually fill in the gaps with a little bit of research. So I just want you to get started today. There's no better time than today to get your first story written for your generations to come. So if you enjoy receiving videos like this, then click that little subscribe button and click like if you enjoyed this video and leave a comment. I love responding to comments to my videos, and the authors enjoy it and appreciate it too. So until next time, I'm Judy Waters. You have a story to tell. Let me help you tell it.